Everything really kicked off when rifts ripped open in the sky and monsters poured out, turning the city into a burning war zone until some people suddenly woke up as hunters. Out of those new hunters, 7 built big noble bloodlines for themselves. But there was one guy who grinded his way up solo, no blessings, no cheats, just pure work. That guy blew up in the east, known everywhere as the miracle hunter who walked calm as ever while 3 creepy, robed skeletons floated behind him like his personal squad. Soon enough, the noble clans and even the so-called holy stars looked at him and decided he was way too dangerous for their comfy system to stay as it was. After that decision, an entire city burned, skyscrapers collapsing and streets melting in fire like someone had turned the whole place into a man-made hell. Tons of hunters got wiped on that flaming battlefield, all because they were thrown in as sacrifices with one job: hunt down the unbeatable hero. In the middle of those bodies and the burning flag, the magic-focused family rolled up, their black eagle banner sticking out like it owned the whole ruined battlefield. On the shattered ground, clinging to a blood-stained pocket watch with a trembling hand while everything around him fell apart. His chest was heaving, sweat and soot all over his face, every shaky breath showing how much that last fight had completely drained him. Even on one knee with a wrecked body and one arm gone, he still gripped that cracked watch and stared straight ahead, locked in on the enemy without flinching. Boiling with pure rage, the young man glares up at Dmitri, blaming the old mage in front of him for turning everything around them into this burning hell. The enemy casually stays seated above the wrecked doorway, eyeing the chaos below like it's a show made just for him. The hooded mage standing in the street almost feels like a god in human form, calmly enjoying how helpless the unguarded young man has ended up in this ruined city. The boy coughs through dust and blood, barely upright as he wonders why they're so set on wiping him out. He struggles to understand if they're after him because he never chose a god, or because he refused to crawl to the nobles for protection. The old man just laughs in the blazes glow and basically tells him both, explaining that the gods can't stand anyone who dares to climb in power by himself. The elder says that the immortal king's strength sits on the same level as theirs, and that's what really has the others scared. Hearing that, the young man calls it straight-up nonsense in his head and keeps that cold, locked-in glare glued to the sorcerer. His opponent goes on anyway, noting that undead magic bends the rules of the world itself and spits on how things are supposed to work. The mage's body starts shining with golden light as he declares that the heavens have turned their backs on the shadow warrior. The young man drops to one knee on the shattered ground, looking up at the old man like he's done hiding, thinking the guy's been relying on that so-called heavenly power for way too long. He slowly raises his hand, and a cold, dark aura starts pouring out of him, twisting around his body in the smoky night. All around the cavern, loose skulls and bones start shaking, then float up as that same ghostly purple light wraps around them. In an instant, dark magic rips across the area like a storm, cutting through everything and proving the hunter isn't even close to out of options. He spreads that power wide, covering the ruined arena in a massive field that makes the enemy at the edge feel trapped inside pure despair. The old man clocks what's happening right away, realizing this ability drains souls as towering skeletons rise up behind the younger hunter. Knowing that his opponent is still locked in even in this state, the old man decides it's time to answer with his own most devastating magic. He reaches out to his deity, draws on its full power, and blasts a blinding golden beam straight down from a giant, unseen gaze. The protagonist sees that ridiculous attack bearing down, and understands it's meant to completely wipe him out. He realizes that if his shadow barrier can't handle this hit, everything ends for him right here. A blinding red-white blast erupts in the middle of everything, sending brutal energy ripping outward like it's about to erase the whole area. A violent wave of crimson and black energy tears across the field, racing straight toward the hunter without slowing down for even a second. With blood running from his eye and chaos all around him, the young man tilts his head back, grinning like he's already decided he'll gamble everything on this last shot. The old mage stares with wild eyes, unable to process why the guy in front of him is smiling like that when everything is on the edge of collapse. As debris flies past, the protagonist tightens his grip and finally reveals the heavy golden pocket watch he'd been clutching in his hand the whole time. Facing the spell head-on, he raises the watch toward it, ready to use the artifact's weird, time-twisting power in one desperate move. In his hands, text flashes across the glowing watch, stating that it will jump back in time now that the hidden conditions have been fulfilled. A blinding blast of golden light surges out, swallowing the scene as the flow of time starts rolling backward around the battered warrior. Blood on his lips and a crooked grin on his face, he reveals he never had some holy gift. He just figured out he could straight up steal the enemies. Holding nothing back, the hunter pours the mage's blast into the watch, letting it soak up the attack while the old man looks on, completely stunned. Dmitri drops into a shaky crouch, eyes blown wide, clutching at his robe like it might save him, completely losing it over what the immortal king is doing right now. In that blazing chaos, the young man lifts the glowing medallion without hesitation, ready to tap into the same holy power the old man used to flex. Leaning forward through the smoke, blood on his face and middle finger raised, the young man wears a wild grin that basically says he's coming back and the noble families are done next round. Deep inside the cracked pocket watch, The clock face flares as the thin hands jerk and spin backward at insane speed, locking in that one crucial moment. A huge white-red blast blows through the corridor and wipes everything out of view, erasing the hunter's senses and dragging his mind out with the light. When it all cuts to black and then fades back in, he finds himself staring up at a plain square light on a boring gray ceiling. He suddenly shoots upright on the narrow bed, sweat flying as his whole body jolts like it doesn't fully belong to him. He grabs at his chest right away, feeling his heart pounding way too hard while his wide eyes scan the cramped room. Even through the panic, the warrior clocks the layout and realizes this is the exact old place he used to crash in. The setup hasn't changed at all, from the TV in front of him to the fridge and simple furniture lined up exactly how he remembers. Sitting in the sunlit room on those messed up sheets, he leans back and studies the glowing watch, wondering if everything he just pulled off with it actually went through. Bent forward with his teeth clenched and rage boiling up, he locks in on one thing, making Dimitri pay for every single thing that led to this point. A cold blue system window pops up in front of him, clearly stating the pocket watch is completely busted now, its cracked face confirming it's never getting used again. Even with the loss, he can't help the small grin on his face, knowing that, in the end, that crazy gamble landed exactly how he needed. Staring at the glowing screen over his bed, he realizes it's rewound him to the morning the system first dropped into the world, almost 10 years in the past. The interface then lays everything out, Chinin RYOGA, Level 1, Fresh Start Stats, and underneath it all, the system calmly tells him to pick his first class from 3 starter choices. Leaning back in the chair with arms crossed, he studies the menu and sees that, just like the old days, only the weakest, most basic builds are open at the start. Sitting on the edge of the bed with his shoulders heavy, he decides that this time he's not speedrunning anything. He's staying alive no matter what. With that resolve set, he stands, shrugs on his brown jacket, and gets ready to move, planning to fully abuse the future info stuck in his head. A little later, he's out in the bright city, making his way toward the tall tower with the crossed swords sign, the place everyone calls the Natsuhabra Hunter Market. Inside the bright jewelry shop, the saleswoman in the black blazer spots him walking in and greets him with a polite, practiced smile like it's just another normal customer. Later that night in a quiet office-style lobby, a suited clerk moves to block him with a stiff arm as he tries to pass, clearly trying to stop him from heading straight to what he came for. Back at the display shelves, the young clerk flinches a little at what he asks for, hand half raised, staring at him with nervous eyes like she totally wasn't ready for that kind of request. Facing him over the glass counter, she awkwardly explains that the thing he wants is cursed, sweat on her cheek, while he just stands there in dark clothes, steady, only focused on hearing how much it costs. Not long after, he's alone in the dim shopping corridor, one hand in his pocket and the other on his phone, walking past shuttered shops with the box already bought and hidden on him like it's no big deal. Even with the manager right behind him in that tight hallway, she still presses him one last time about whether he's sure, looking tense as he silently accepts the danger he just paid for. Out on the open walkway, he pops the black ring box open, sees the simple band sitting in red velvet, and can't help thinking that for something cursed, it really didn't seem worth half his savings. A bright blue system screen pops up in front of his eyes, calmly listing the Ring of Nether Darkness, its stats, and a warning that using it can mess with his head in a serious way. Even with that brutal warning hanging over him, he steadily slides the dark ring onto his finger, already planning how he'll deal with whatever twisted side effects come with it. The second the metal touches his skin, a sharp violet shadow crawls over his body, and that cursed aura kicks in, handing real necromancy power to someone tough enough to carry it without breaking. Standing in that rain-soaked alley, he stares down with a crooked smirk as inky shadows curl from his hand, that dark power now pulsing through him like it finally woke up. A second later, everything around him gets yanked away, and he finds himself alone, staring into a warped, endless void of twisting shadows and broken colors. In that bleak, stormy space, he locks his eyes forward, steady and calm, mentally stepping straight toward the curse bound to the ring without even flinching. The curse pulls itself together, as a blazing golden titan shaped like his greatest enemy, the ancient mage who once ruled over his fate. Down below that massive figure, he stands there in the glow, staring up without backing down, not letting the old man's sheer size or holy look shake him. On that burning battlefield of memories, the mage's lingering spirit circles him, acting like some smug judge saying the heavens walked away from him long ago. The radiant phantom lifts its hand, golden energy spiraling in its palm as it fires a brutal blast straight at the center of the young man's mind. Wrapped in that blinding energy, the illusion silently promises that even with a restart on the timeline, the kid will always stay a step below him. Then a towering bolt of divine light spears down from above, a massive glowing weapon crashing toward his small frame, meant to crush whatever willpower he has left. But with his face half in shadow, he lets out a cold little grin, knowing the system's defenses just shrugged off the ring's mental assault for him. The golden blast slams into him but just fizzles out, clear mind kicking in and quietly blocking the whole thing while he stands there smirking in the light. Right after that, a bright blue window snaps into view, announcing that he's beaten the trial of the Ring of Nether Darkness. As the words sink in, The twisted void around him starts cracking like glass, shadows breaking apart until the dark world completely wipes away. Back in the black void, a cold blue fire suddenly burns in his eye, that necromancer power finally clicking on as he stares ahead with zero fear. Eerie blue light floods around him, while he grabs his own wrist with a wild grin, shadows closing in like he's about to unleash a squad that even gods wouldn't want smoke with. In the middle of spinning, dark energy, the simple ring hovering in the void flares, its glow sharpening as the system quietly boosts it up from rare to epic. Under bright warehouse lights, he just stands there in his jacket, smirking as he crushes the last trace of the curse and casually shows off the upgraded dark ring locked on his finger. A full system menu slides open in front of him, 4 glowing options on display, and he moves his hand up toward them without even hesitating. His fingers trail right past the other 3 choices before tapping Necromancer, picking the soul-driven class meant for handling the dead like it's the obvious play. A deep purple glow fills the quiet hallway as the Necromancer skull's sigil floats beside him, the class aura wrapping around his body while he stays lean back and relaxed. The system drops a new passive on him called Guide of Death, that eerie skull icon floating in the void, and he can tell this summon boost is going to carry hard later. Standing near the entrance with his arms crossed and that slight smug grin, he's already rating this as a solid start for his Necromancer grind. But as he scrolls down the glowing skills panel in front of him, he quickly notices there are only 2 abilities sitting there. One lets him drag corpses back onto the field, and the other gives him direct command over their bones like they're his own little army pieces. In the hallway, tapping his chin with the black ring catching the light, he admits to himself that even with future knowledge, the big spells are still locked off. Watching the interface crackle and glitch in front of him, he knows playing it safe and staying inside the usual system path is never going to reach his true cap. Hanging back near the loading dock, he knows grabbing Necromancer this early was clutch, but deep down he also knows it alone still won't be enough. Walking that narrow, purple-lit corridor, golden eyes sharp, he's sure that if he wants to erase Dimitri, he has to tap into the strength of an old constellation. With everything mapped out, he flies out over the ocean on a passenger jet, heading for a far-off island city that's waiting under the clouds. His target is the island's legendary ruin, the old Temple of Cronus, lined up as the place where the god of time supposedly left his mark. Up in that unreal sky lie the star gods that blinked out after getting slammed by Zeus. The titans who didn't fight the lost still get treated like legit gods. In the broken plaza, the lone warrior stands in front of that cracked stone coffin altar like it's an old legend pulled into real life. Staring at the shattered gold watch in his hand, he realizes the god who owned this thing is one of those fallen constellations. So now he knows his next step is hunting down that so-called star god that's chained up somewhere. Without overthinking it, he brings the watch down hard on the stone altar, smashing it into scattered pieces. From those shards, a brutal golden light erupts, bright enough to make him squint like the sun's exploding at his feet. The whole place starts rumbling, and in an instant the ground and sky around him crack and fall apart like broken glass. When the flash clears, he's standing in a massive hall, soft colors from a huge stained glass window drifting over him like he just walked into a cathedral cutscene. He scans the glowing chamber, steady, while an unknown presence kicks in, clearly demanding to know who just stepped into its space. In that roaring, stormlit void, the massive godlike figure looms over him, power flaring as it demands to know who dared wake it from its endless sleep. Down in the blinding mist, the hunter's lips curl into a calm, cocky smile, eyeing the so-called god without even a hint of fear. Standing in the shattered space beneath that towering presence, he coolly addresses it as Cronus, the death-crowned ruler who once stood over all titans. The time god's icy gold eyes narrow on him, gaze hard and distant as if trying to read every lie and secret sitting on his soul. Below that crushing divine pressure, the young man keeps his grip tight around the broken pocket watch at his side, the same wrecked gear that tossed him into this place. Floating in that cosmic storm, the Titan's voice cuts through the emptiness as it wonders if this tiny human really pulled off traveling back through its sacred time. The kid answers with an easy smile, slightly raising his hand to show off the busted watch pieces that prove he actually did it. The titanic figure acknowledges his feat like it's impressive for an ant, then coolly questions why it had to be dragged up from its deep, peaceful sleep. Standing by the glowing altar, he casually reminds the ancient king that Olympus took everything from him, leaving Cronus as nothing more than a name barely anyone remembers. Holding the chain medallion up with a dark little grin, he provocatively wonders if this forgotten god doesn't still crave a shot at payback. The old god stiffens, eyes narrowing in that cold starlight as he stares down, and insists the kid say those words again. In the glowing hall, the hunter stands there smirking and lays it out. He wants this forgotten god to become his constellation and ride with him for revenge. Cronus's voice comes out sharp and heated, that huge form leaning in as he snaps that some mortal brat could never do anything for a god's revenge. Through it all, the kid's pale hand never loosens around the busted pocket watch, metal pressed into his palm as he faces the ancient titan. In that blue-lit chamber, he quietly flexes, pointing out he already climbed to 9-star on his own and that Zeus himself is on his hit list. On top of that, Having all 7 of those so-called noble families gunning for him has turned every one of them into part of his enemy roster. He explains that if those families get wiped, Olympus's grip will crack, but Cronus just sees that target as something way too small for true revenge. With a faint, knowing smile, the god comments that even after rewinding his life, this kid's still locked in the road of a necromancer. Hearing that, the hunter looks up at him, amused, and counters that might be how the god of time sees it, but it doesn't really apply to the one tied to harvests. An ancient mural-style scene plays out, showing Cronus not just holding time in his hands, but standing as the ruler of both time and the harvest together. That long blade in his hands isn't just a weapon. It's the Reaper's own signal that death doesn't care about rules or how things are supposed to go. Out in the swirling void, the Titan leans in over him, rage boiling, and blasts him with a warning to remember who he's talking to. All around the ruins, the marble floors and massive columns begin to shake and crack, the whole temple reacting like it's about to snap under ancient rage. Down in the wrecked hall, the hunter yells back through the chaos, focused only on surviving right now, not on some bruised godly ego. He stares up at that towering figure and challenges him, wondering if he plans to just exist forever with no real title and no serious power to his name. Keeping his eyes cold, the young man keeps pushing, throwing out the idea that, at this rate, the god could end up looking weaker than Olympus itself. Then he outright throws the challenge on the table, urging Cronus to grab his strength back and wipe Olympus off the map for good. Deep down, though, he knows if things don't go exactly how he planned, this god could erase him without even trying. The old Titan's grin spreads across his face as he calmly admits that the urge to hit back at Olympus never really died. After that, the glowing Titan decides to see for himself if this kid actually has what it takes to fuel that comeback. Golden light burns around his raised hand as the kid quietly accepts that turning himself into something divine is going to hurt like hell. The god shapes a blinding orb in his palm, and the deal is clear in the air. If the kid lives through this, that being will lock in as his constellation. As the whole hall explodes with light and rubble crashes down, it suddenly hits him that the trial isn't coming later, it's kicking off right now. In that storm of glare and thunder, Cronus stretches out a glowing hand and claims the kid down below as his official saint and stand-in. Lit from behind, sweat on his face, the hunter just freezes, brain scrambling at the fact that he's somehow been chosen as a god's saint. Alone in the black, he stands shouting while a massive gold flame roars up around him, that new constellation power ripping straight through his body. Each step forward in the blinding glow makes his long coat whip as dark energy under his skin slams hard against the incoming holy light. Struggling up from the floor with that fierce aura burning off him, he clenches his teeth, fully aware that blacking out now would throw away his one shot to stand with a god. High above in the stormy void, Cronus just watches with glowing eyes and that unreadable, distant stare while the kid's trial plays out. Even as golden power explodes through his nerves and every muscle screams, the hunter refuses to fold, grinding his way through the crushing pressure. Gritting his teeth, he leans straight into that blinding holy light, ignoring the burn as he rides the divine trial out to the very last second. Time cuts forward and his sneakers step out from automatic doors into a bright hallway. Saul's tapping against the spotless floor as the sliding door sound pops off behind him. He's soon moving with the crowd at the terminal entrance, suitcase rolling smooth at his side while he walks through the airport, clearly on his way back home. Standing there under the cool indoor lights, he tilts his chin up with a smug little smirk, body language screaming that returning here beats every other place he's been. In the next moment, a chibi Cronus pops up at his shoulder, arms folded, tiny fangs showing, checking in with this stiff, stone-faced kid like it's scouting how the era turned out. The floating god drifts lazy circles around him in the busy terminal, playfully ranting about how long it's been while the little cloaked girl bounces around their space. Out in the stars, the camera shifts to the heavens as a glowing message cuts in, stating that a brand new constellation just locked into the Pantheon, the Harvester now registered as the Azure Giant. Later, walking a bright hallway with his awkward stiff step, he side-eyes the spirit and ribs it, thinking this chatterbox deity sure runs its mouth for someone with no buffs to hand out. Leaning there with that sweat drop and wary stare down the corridor, he can't help admitting to himself that even without power, believers, or clout, this so-called god looks weirdly satisfied. In the golden time-drenched chamber, the massive titan form of Cronus sinks back into reality through the Reaper title, knowing he needs fresh hype and worship to turn that entrance into actual strength. Even so, after getting stuck for what feels like forever, the tiny old god floating in this concrete jungle is clearly hyped just to be out. In the bright lobby, the spirit starts telling him to boost his name out in the world, and the hunter suddenly realizes he's dead center in some weird, one-of-a-kind setup. Watching that glowing system data slide past his eyes, he thinks about how the saint job sits at the top, and how Cronus basically forced him into playing priest. The screen flashes back that his class is the Saint of the White Knight, and somehow that title doesn't slap him with any nerfs on his necromancer path. Buried in the text is the crazy part. he can trade holy power into spirit power whenever he wants, and still pull off lifesteal on top of that. In that dark void flickering with gold and shadow, it hits him that almost nobody in this world can run saint power and necro tricks at the same exact time. Looking at the two energy bars linked together, he quietly admits this combo is stupidly strong, like one of those bugged out builds that never should have gone live. When the god casually mentions a saint is basically their stand-in, the young man realizes every piece of this was laid out long in advance. The spirit brags about once being the king over all the gods, and the warrior touches his chin, thinking things through as a different plan starts forming. With that confident smirk settling back on his face, he decides the Furujuku portal really is the right play. That ancient garden, glowing in the middle of a sunny clearing, looks like the perfect spot for him to see what his new strength can really do. High above the city, deadly portals keep ripping open like that blazing blue sphere, punching routes from normal Earth straight into other dimensions. Some of those gates show up like that glitchy panel in midair, counting as temporary dungeons that vanish the moment their boss gets wiped. But there are also permanent gates stamped into the world, and that towering ancient garden door on the street is one of those that never disappear. Since the ancient garden only ranks as a 1-star gate, it's known as a soft entry spot where new hunters can get in without instantly throwing their lives away. Right in front of that shining doorway, a bunch of rookie hunters hang around under the daylight, chatting about parties and teams before they queue up to head inside. Off to the side in the fading light, he just stands there with his jacket on, quietly watching everything with sharp, guarded eyes. In the next moment, a squad in armor steps into his path in the park, clearly trying to pull him into their lineup for this raid. He barely pauses. After one short, polite refusal, he heads straight past the tension and walks on by himself toward the bright portal. The hunter who tried calling out to him scratches at his neck, a little awkward, but ends up nodding like he fully gets why the guy wants to solo it. In the sunny park by the portal, one of the armored kids glances over and wonders if that newbie is really fine heading in there by himself. The tiny rogue girl waves it off, saying they shouldn't stress, since he's the one who insisted on going in solo. The older warrior leader, sweating a bit, still trusts that at this rank the kid can easily watch his own back. The boy in casual clothes steps into the glowing gate, and the system flare pops up, labeling the place as the ancient garden. He strolls through the sunlit overgrown ruins, calmly clocking how weirdly quiet and empty the forest feels. Pushing through the brush, he clocks the vibes and realizes this silence is textbook. Ambush about to go down. His lips curl into a sharp grin as it hits him that his first target in this dungeon is already closing in. A heartbeat later, he lifts his head and catches sight of a monster launching itself out of the trees straight at him. Bursting into the clearing, the scrawny goblin rushes him with crazy eyes, brandishing its crooked dagger. It snaps in with a fast slash, but the young man tilts aside and answers with a clean counter, dodging like it's nothing. The snarling goblin demon lunges and lets out a sharp, shrieking cry as its whole body flares with a wild white aura. In that dark chamber, the calm silver-haired hunter grips its throat tighter, casually swapping his own spiritual energy into this burning holy power. A storm of system windows flickers up in his vision, listing every detail of his life-drained skill while the monster twists in the raging light. He triggers the skill without blinking, and the goblin's life force rips out of its chest in blinding streams, its body shaking as the screen goes raw. Watching the bright and dark energy tear across that glowing surface, he realizes that handling sacred power or spirit power Loki hits basically the same for him. Planting his glowing hands right over the creature's chest, he keeps pulling, draining every last drop of that rune beast's strength as it claws at itself. A harsh green aura snaps alive around his body, crackling through the teal space as he confidently locks in the final form of his new routine. The goblin's dried-out corpse collapses in the dirt at his feet, and notification windows confirm his base stats just climbed again. Seeing all those numbers shoot up off a single life drain test, he can't help feeling fired up, knowing this skill literally bodies groups for free gains. Another bright screen pops up, clearly stating that each level up throws him 5 extra status points on top. From his new stats, he roughly figures that wiping out around 25 goblins would straight up equal 1 clean level for him. Later, as he walks through the quiet, sunlit woods still tense from the fight, little Cronus quietly drifts up beside his back like it's the most natural thing ever. Out in the misty trail, after the rush fades, Cronus watches him cool off while he reminds himself just how crazy that newfound power felt running through his body. In the bright forest clearing, the old god spreads his arms and laughs like he just pulled off some legendary highlight, and the hunter can't deny the boost really hits hard. Feeling the forest air on his new form, Cronus stretches like a guy warming up before a big game, clearly planning to actually get involved from here on out. In the middle of the field, the dead goblin lies still until a sharp flash stirs inside its blank eyes, the first green sparks of the spell flickering to life. That electric grin cuts across his face as turquoise power coils around his hand, and he fires off the command, turning the corpse in the grass into his personal puppet. The calm clearing suddenly shifts when a pale, clawed hand wrapped in jagged blue-black light slams out of the dirt, energy cracking the air around it. Under that harsh teal aura, the broken body starts trembling and easing off the ground, its limp limbs hanging as the necromancer grip drags it back into motion. In the deepening dark of the trees, the once simple goblin slowly pulls itself upright, glowing like some twisted beast, nothing like the helpless thing it was before. The hunter takes one look at the weird, horned undead in front of him and feels pretty pleased, seeing it standing steady and locked in on his command. Right away, the system throws up a message saying this zombie's base rating is crazy high now, with its status numbers boosted by 97%. In the span of a moment, the monster gets logged as a solid 1-star undead unit and stands there, fully geared to jump into a fight. Seeing how clean the upgrade was, he figures this single summoned thug is enough to clear out the ancient garden stuff by himself. With that in mind, he turns his back on the entrance and moves deeper into the trees, letting his new zombie trail right behind him. Before they get far, 3 muscled-up goblins crash out of the brush with their junk weapons raised, sprinting straight for them. The snarling creatures clock the calm human and his glowing minion in the clearing and get ready to rush them together. The young man Loki likes how this is lining up, decides it's the perfect trial run, and orders his undead to push in first. The zombie instantly launches itself forward, teal light dragging behind it as it rockets toward the goblins without slowing down. It swings in brutal and clean, smashing its fist into a goblin's face and sending teeth and blood spraying in all directions. The 2 other goblins rush in from behind, jabbing their crude knives into the zombie's back, but it just stands there like it didn't even notice. One more goblin comes pulling in from the side with a wild slash, yet the undead tank doesn't even wobble and stays locked in place. Seeing their weapons do nothing, the goblins start panicking while the young man calmly understands they're just wasting hits on something stabbing can't drop. Using that panic as cover, he quietly closes the distance and suddenly clamps a hand around one goblin's throat, yanking it up with ease. The young man lifts the goblin clean off the ground, and cold white light erupts as he kicks in life drain, pulling its vital energy straight into himself. At the same time, his summoned brute steps in and drives a brutal kick into another goblin's gut, launching it backwards through the sunny clearing. The zombie then pivots toward the last straggler, and hammers a heavy punch into its body, flattening the monster where it stands. Dropping any hesitation, the undead creature leans down and tears into the enemy's neck, ripping and chewing with savage focus. A little farther off, the warrior stands over a corpse in the soft light, eyeing it calmly as he wonders if there's still strength left for him to pull. He activates the skill on the fallen body, watches the energy flow into his hand, and grins slightly as the floating stat numbers tick upward again. With that sharp little smirk, he decides it's time to stop playing slow and really speed things up. People say dropping the first enemy is already half the clear in a fight like this. For him, that basically means the real wall is just getting that first corpse to stand back up. So he taps into his dark power and silently calls for the rest of the dead goblins to get on their feet. 4 more bodies, all with stacked stats, jerk upright and stand by like loyal thugs waiting on his move. Seeing that squad ready behind him, he can't help that satisfied grin, knowing this was the setup he'd wanted from the start. His fresh undead rush out like a pack, and he locks in the feeling that being a necromancer really is the top-tier play. The goblins still alive get swarmed in seconds, torn into by undead swinging on them from every side. One zombie takes a sword straight through the body and just keeps walking, not even registering the hit. The small goblin stiffens and freaks out when it realizes that desperate stab basically did nothing. The goblin thing reels back, sweating and baring its teeth, knowing it's about to die for real this time. A second later, the pale undead slams the man down and rips into his neck, tearing meat like it's starving. After the chaos, Cronus floats in beside him in the bloody clearing, calm like he's reminding the contractor to carry himself better. The contractor just stands there with his hands still stained red, fully owning that this ugly style is exactly how necromancers handle fights. Before long, he's got 20 undead locked in around him, maxed out on how many puppets he can pull at once. Holding his glowing hand out, he taps into the teal current, and gets ready to drain power straight from the corpses on the ground. Moments later, he's curved together a creepy little squad, zombie goblins crouched at his feet waiting for his signal. With one thought, he launches them forward, and they sprint screaming through the trees into the dark. Out of nowhere, a blazing arrow tears through the air, shot by some archers zeroing in on the rushing horde. The bolt slams dead center into one goblin's chest, dropping it and dragging a raw, broken scream out of its throat. The protagonist calls his undead to a halt and stiffens up, instantly clocking that someone else is moving in the trees around the clearing. He stares straight ahead into the shadows and bluntly tells whoever's hiding to cut it out and step out where he can see them. From behind the trunks and branches, 2 figures finally step into view, edging out of the woods like hunters who've been tailing him for a while. The same squad that approached him earlier shows up again, lined up in front of him, demanding to know what his deal actually is. Cronus floats behind him, curious and watching, while the young man studies their faces and realizes he's seen this exact group before. He remembers they're the twin shadow hunters everyone talks about, the pair known for tracking and finishing targets without slipping up. The young man calmly thinks back and knows these twins are the ones who came after him and tried to erase him before his regression. The girl, Yuka Rendo, stands ready with her bow in hand, known as an archer who barely ever misses once she's locked on. And her brother, Yumarindo, grips his weapon with solid confidence, remembered as a frontline fighter with crazy physical strength. The young man watches how they carry themselves now and notes they don't exactly hit as hard, at least not like how he remembered them. He checks their status screen, sees the tag still sitting at 1 star, but now showing 3 members instead of 2. Remembering they just took a contract before and never really targeted him, he decides to chill and not start anything. One of the twin siblings steps forward, eyeing the clearing nervously, and asks if he's the one pulling the strings on that zombie. The hero realizes most people in this quiet forest zone barely know what a necromancer even is yet. He calmly owns it, confirming the undead are his squad and subtly flexing them like trophies in front of the group. Staring at the 3 tense hunters under the morning light, the young man suddenly locks onto a solid plan. He figures he needs people to haul loot anyway, and these 3 guys are probably here to grind coin more than anything. With that in mind, he walks up to the trio and casually offers them some work, leaving their nervous frontmen blinking in confusion. He lays out the deal on the spot. They grab the magic stones for him, and they all split the cut 80-20. The 3 hunters quietly trade looks in the soft sunlight, their guarded expressions making it clear they don't fully trust the offer. Morning light slips through the trees and colors the empty clearing while the 3 adventurers huddle up and quietly run through the necromancer's offer. In that patch of sun, the brown-haired archer and the blonde guy both push back on the plan, telling their sturdier teammate not to just hand trust to some random corpse controller. A short distance away, the actual necromancer leans against a tree and chills, watching their little argument play out while he waits to see what they decide. From his spot, their voices blend together like annoying background noise, and he just stays there, locked in on waiting for a clear, final answer. After a bit, the team's leader suddenly calls out that he'll take the deal, leaving his 2 buddies with wide-eyed faces and zero prep for that decision. The leader still pushes back a little though, saying he wants the haul split right down the middle if they're really doing this together. Hearing that, the hunter counters with a calm 70-30 cut and leaves it there, and the leader gives a stiff nod, agreeing even though it clearly stings. Later, when they're lined up side by side, the nervous younger teammate glances at their veteran and quietly questions if their senpai honestly thinks this plan is smart. The older fighter shakes it off and lays out his logic, pointing out that if the necromancer meant to kill them, they'd already be bodies on the forest floor. In his head, he figures tagging along with this strange young man will probably stack way more coin than anything their usual grind ever brings in. A while later, over in that glowing clearing, one of the guys is totally drained, just off screen, barely mumbling that he's done. The young hunter ends up sprawled face down in the grass, reaching hopelessly toward the scattered red crystals like he's already tapped out. Near the edge of the trees, the archer just slumps back against a trunk, one knee up, sweat running as she squeezes her eyes shut, clearly worn past her limit. Their veteran teammate stands over a straight-up mountain of red crystals, adding one more shard while the other 2 just sit there staring like it doesn't feel real. Watching all that loot stacked under the soft morning light, he finally admits to himself he clocked from the start that this so-called contractor was built different. Looking around at the bloody field and the bodies everywhere, he realizes the run went way beyond anything he pictured, and the necromancer just wiped the place clean. The young guy doesn't even look tired as more blue spirits loom behind him. He simply gestures at the fresh corpses on the grass, making it clear that's where the real profit is. Shoulders heavy and armor slick with sweat, the leader forces a weak smile and asks if they can at least chill for a bit before getting thrown back into it. Even as he's talking, a brutal brawl pops off again, and his teal-glowing monsters wreck another goblin on the spot. No hesitation, no mercy. When it's over and a pinned corpse buzzes under that eerie barrier at his feet, the necromancer casually points toward it, signaling the guys to move in and grab the next batch of stones. Grinning like it's no big deal, he casually tells the guy to take his time, and the other hunter just sits there sweating, not even knowing how to respond. Trudging along the road, boxed in by that gloomy sky vibe, the 3 finally admit to themselves this dude they're following is definitely not some average human. Standing alone in the bright clearing, bodies of goblins scattered face down around him, he looks over the scene and quietly decides he's pretty much wiped this whole spot clean. With the last monster down and the wildflowers slowly reclaiming the bloody ground, he takes a breath and pulls up his status screen to see where his numbers landed. The glowing blue display pops up in front of him, full of graphs and digits going crazy, clearly showing every main stat and his holy type mana shot way up from that hunt. Seeing how hard his points jumped in just 3 hours makes him smirk, low-key impressed with how stacked his sheet looks now. Feeling the new level kicking in, he turns his back on the quiet clearing and starts walking deeper between the trees, letting the darker part of the forest swallow him up. In his head, he decides this is where he stops playing around with small fry and heads straight for the dungeon boss to wrap this run. Before long, his path cuts into a ravine and a squad of beefed-up goblins and their shamans show up, charging out from the throne area like they own the place. At the center of them all, the shaman leader leans forward with that skull staff and stares him down, acting like this clueless human finally walked into his turf on purpose. Walking down the sun-cut path with that cocky half-smile, He casually trashes the idea that some dumb goblin really runs this whole forest. At his side, the girl reminds him that this one isn't just any mob, he's the southern boss, and poking that bear usually ends badly. Somewhere in the misty trees, a gaunt face tightens and that lone red eye flares, silently sending out the order to make the human kneel. In the wooden hallway ahead, a tidal wave of screaming goblins barrels forward as their frontliner leads the rush to tear the human apart. Out in the rain-slick clearing, 3 teal-lit monsters surge at him, but he just stands planted, knowing his dead squad is already locked in. In the ghostly blue glow, one of his goblin zombies lunges first, only to get caught off guard when the enemy snaps back harder than expected. The raging creature launches in close and drives that crackling teal weapon straight into the undead in one clean, vicious move. The strike blasts through the minion's body, hurling it backward and dumping it to the bloody ground in a single brutal hit. In the teal-washed dusk, blood still hanging in the air, a quiet system window pops up and ticks his active familiars down to 19. Surrounded by churning energy, the necromancer stares ahead, expression frozen, and silently yanks on the fallen corpse, calling it back under his control. A huge blue claw punches out of the dirt-soaked ground, dark strands of shadow wrapping around it as it drags itself free. The torn-up goblin on the ledge suddenly jerks upright, black blood pouring from its cracked chest as it lurches forward as fresh undead. Down on the cavern floor, that new corpse puppet launches straight at another goblin, slamming into it and driving it to the ground. In the cramped darkness, the hooded corpse controller lets his glowing minion rip its arm clean off, blood flying as the goblin howls your typical horror movie scream. Out in the bright clearing, the 3 rookie adventurers just stare, sweating as they watch his fallen enemies claw back up under his control. Somewhere darker, a beefy guy by an open crate reaches in and grips a skull-shaped piece of gear like he's about to pull out something nasty. Out on a blood-red field, the goblin shaman lifts a warped skull staff high, eyes burning as power starts pouring off it. It smashes the staff into the ground and a gigantic skeletal head erupts upward, turning into a towering totem in the middle of the chaos. All around, bony goblin spirits rush out, eyes blazing red as they race forward with blades and murderous hype cranked to max. A hulking green boss howls in pride, thrilled that the aura from his new totem is juicing up his squad while dragging their enemies down. But one of the undead beasts suddenly smashes straight through the towering skull totem, and the young man just stands there behind it, casually eyeing the shattered mess on the ground like he's wondering what trash they tried to scare him with. The scarred monster near the edge of the field slowly turns its head, body tense, completely thrown off that its precious totem just got wiped in front of it. Its eyes light up in deep red as it snaps inside, staring ahead with pure rage, furious that some regular human dared to ruin what it treated like holy gear. While the goblin is still losing it, the hunter's blue glowing corpses slam heavy skull-top poles into the dirt all around the battlefield, lining them up on the blood-stained ground like anchors. A towering undead brute surges forward through the green stormlight, gripping one of those cursed staves as it brings the teal-charged weapon down and smashes straight through a skeleton-clad goblin. Another revived monster lunges out from the warped trees, driving its seized bone staff up in time to catch the incoming blade, stopping the other goblin's savage swing midair. The attacker staggers, grip trembling on its weapon, clearly stunned that its fully powered strike just got hard stopped by something that's already supposed to be dead. Out in the misty clearing, the young man watches everything with that sharp little grin, eyes locked on the shaman as he quietly basks in how annoyed the goblin's getting. Deeper in the shadows, the goblin chief's jaw tightens as it clamps down on its anger, clutching the skull-tipped staff so hard the wood beneath its claws looks ready to snap. The hulking leader then slams its cursed staff into the ground, stones cracking as a wild red aura erupts across the chamber, pouring madness through the air like blazing fog. The spell blasts through the field and slams into the 3 hunters, dropping them to one knee as their heads pound and that blinding red glow tears at their eyes. In that instant, raging energy pours into the goblins, their bodies bulking up and their stats shooting way past normal, like someone just boosted every number by 50 on the spot. Powered up and cocky, the goblins rush the zombie line, and one of the necromancer's undead gets caved in instantly as a monster drives its glowing fist straight into his chest. Backed by that new strength, the goblin pack keeps swinging non-stop, tearing through the undead and chopping them down one after another in a gruesome blur. It doesn't take long before the steady wave of attacks has chewed his whole squad down, and the proud undead army he brought in is cut to barely 10 bodies still standing. Moments later, the field is covered with broken corpses of his minions, black blood soaking the dirt, while he realizes there are only 8 loyal undead left holding the line. Watching that advantage flip on him, the young man locks onto the weapon and finally gets it. That warped staff really was the goblin boss's hidden ace. The shaman stands there in the sunlight grinning like he's already won, pouring his pride into the staff as the dark power coiling around it goes wild. Drunk on his own hype, Simon practically flexes with the thing, acting like the staff stripping with every grudge and rage his goblins ever spat out. But as the necromancer studies it closer, he spots the fine details under all that flair and realizes the whole weapon is literally carved straight from bone. Shadow sliding across his face, he lets a subtle smirk slip, already knowing the fight just got way more free for him. He throws his hand forward and unleashes that bone control power, dark and teal energy exploding out as he goes to flip the whole situation. Over by the shack, the goblin chief grips his skull staff harder, eyes twitching as it randomly starts shaking in his sweaty hands. A heartbeat later, the skull spine snaps upward in a blur, yanked out of his grip by some unseen force before he can even react. In the foggy forest, the young guy stands calm with the stolen skull staff in his hands, the warped green curse around them already fading out. Down the corridor, the charging goblin stutters in disbelief mid-lunge, brain barely processing whatever that weak human just pulled off. As the cursed pressure lifts, all the goblins instantly feel lighter and slower, their buffed-up power dropping off hard. Reaching out, he taps his bone control again, locking onto the tiny skull and making it twitch as energy curls tight around it. Watching how fast the skull responds, he casually clocks that its movements hit quicker now, amped by all those grudges packed inside. Back under the green light, he smirks and lazily points the spear outward, as if telling the monster it can try playing with its toy again. He launches the staff with everything he's got, sending it ripping across the cracked stone floor toward the goblin chief as dark energy carves a path after it. The chief just stands there, red eyes wide and jaw hanging as it watches the incoming blast, its body basically frozen in place. A heartbeat later, the staff slams straight through the goblin's chest, power exploding out like the impact's about to cave the whole arena in. It staggers and looks down, seeing the white skull head of its own weapon suddenly bulging out of its chest, dripping black fluid. The body tips forward and gets hammered into the dirt, pinned there, and the young man calmly starts pulling the creature's life energy out through his skill. With this thing counting as a boss, the surge that crashes into him is way heavier than what he gets from the usual trash mobs. Out on the city street later, he suddenly stops mid-step and twists around, eyes widening a bit as something clicks in his head. Back in the clearing, the two rookie hunters just stand there, staring at him like they missed a whole season of lore and don't get what he's doing at all. Kneeling beside the crushed goblin boss, he casually drips what blood is left from its wrecked head into a small bottle in his hand. Only then does it hit him that his life drain already pulled almost every last drop out of the corpse, leaving barely anything for the vial. Leaving the mess behind, he tells the nervous guy the system will handle the bodies, and the leader barely nods, still stressed as they face each other in the misty clearing. At the edge of the goblin graveyard, the hunters stand silently, staring over the wrecked remains and scattered weapons like their brains are lagging trying to process what went down here. In the blink of an eye the forest fades, and the view jumps to wide glass towers shining in the sun, a clean, futuristic city stretching out under the blue sky. On the sun-baked path, his spotless white sneaker lands with a quiet step, one more careful stride bringing him out into the open as the calm moment before things start up again. He walks along the bright city street with that blue digital-looking aura fading behind him, back in the real world again, moving like someone who just cleared a dungeon and knows it. The three warriors shamble out into the sunlight behind him at the outpost gate, weighed down by a massive pack and that grinning skull staff, looking tired enough to pass out on the spot. As they cross the plaza, people stare at the pile of stones they brought out and whisper to each other, clearly doubting that just 4 people could have pulled that much out of a dungeon. Walking down the sunny street with his new party, the young man casually gives them props for surviving and tells them they should cash out the stones at a shop back in Natsobara. The armored leader glances over, sweat beading as he explains that if they want a decent payday, they're better off selling all the monster scraps and stones themselves instead of dumping them cheap. Off to the side in the park, the hero studies them with a tense look, wondering if he should really trust a few people he only linked up with a few hours ago. The three of them stand there tense and awkward, looking stressed, while he just shrugs it off like he was only messing with them the whole time. Leaning on the awkward mood, he casually brings up how much they're getting paid for this run, and the answer dropped is a straight 6 million. As that number hangs in the air, the taller black-haired guy switches focus and smoothly pulls the skull-topped staff out of the backpack by the bench. Checking it over in the daylight, he remarks that a random staff like this probably won't sell for much, leaving the armored guy blinking, not really getting what he means. The weapon itself is a cursed support staff made for priests, the kind that boosts spiritual power but messes with people's heads at the same time. The dark-haired guy breaks it down, saying priests can't actually use that kind of raw spirit power anyway, so the thing's basically dead weight for their party. So right there on the garden path, he decides he'll just hang on to it himself, and the armored leader stares up at him, totally thrown off. Staying calm, he confirms he's serious and tells them to just knock whatever it's worth off his cut when they do the payout later. The leader pushes back, insisting they're not cutting anything from his share, since there's no world where they would have gotten an item like that without him. The young man glances at the other two for backup, and they say they're rolling with whatever their leader decides. Leaning forward with that smug grin in the middle of the plaza, he realizes this kind of attitude from a party is exactly his type. Later, strolling casually past the armored adventurers on the city street, he lines up another dungeon run for them, and the whole group jumps on it without hesitation. By the next day, they're pushing into that glowing, overgrown garden again, ready to farm it all over like it's just another quest. In the sunlit clearing, he stands there, hands in his pockets, calmly watching his zombie pin a goblin down with teal energy and delete it without even struggling. After that, standing in the dappled light, he glances back at them with a focused look, quietly checking if they've actually got enough gas to keep going. A little later, all three are sprawled out in the bloody grass, breathing hard beside fallen goblins and red crystals, completely wiped from the grind. Slumped against the battlefield, their leader finally admits he's done and their packs are already stuffed past what they can carry. So the young man tells them to head back first and cash out, and the hunter immediately agrees like he's been waiting to bail. Once they leave, he walks deeper into the jungle by himself, undead army around him. Moving like this solo push is the real run he planned. Drifting by his side, Cronus asks why he let them walk early, and he just wonders if he really made it that easy to read. He points out that whatever happens next isn't for spectators, wanting this part to stay off limits to anyone else. After that, he walks off toward the darker northern end of the old garden, heading straight for the gloomier side. Up there, the plants grow thicker and taller, and the whole portal feels heavier, like the air itself doesn't want you around. Out of nowhere, several red points light up inside the bushes, staring from the trees like something already locked onto him. In the next instant, a pack of frogmen armed with spears drops in around him from every side, charging straight at his position. Staying calm, he sends a signal, and his zombie squad surges forward, slamming into the enemy as the real fight finally pops off. In the chaos, one undead minion latches onto a frogman's neck and sinks its teeth in deep, pumping poison straight into its body. Another of the creatures quickly checks the teammate that just went down, mentally stumbling for a second as its focus slips. A zombie darts in and drives a weapon toward its back, but the frogman senses the swipe at the last second and twists to meet it. Even so, his undead head count steadily drops, because these things hit harder and resist more than his usual enemies. The frogmen in that murky clearing turn out to be way tougher than goblins, swarming the zombies with crackling blue energy, and really putting his undead on the back foot. Watching the undead struggle while the frog warriors drive spears into that goblin leader, the hero realizes their stats are straight up higher than normal goblins, so the extra pressure tracks. Standing calm behind the dying goblin, he taps into his potion control, flicks his wrist, and sends the skull-top bone staff flying forward wrapped in eerie energy. The skullet staff slams straight into a frog warrior's chest, blood and blue light exploding out as a translucent system window instantly pops up in front of his eyes. Down in the dim underground room, the skewered frog creature suddenly gets covered in this greasy rainbow sheen and leans in with a wet, gross grin that makes the whole scene feel wrong. Sound cues ring in his ears, and his eye narrows as he listens, Loki unnerved by how weird that frog monster is acting after getting hit. In the next instant, he drives a hard kick straight into the ambush's torso, sending the red-jacketed teen's attacker flying as he tries out the new boost for real. The skull shot slamming into the frog's chest isn't just for show. The staff takes its piercing damage and loads it with raw spirit power, turning hit impact into something nasty. Stepping forward in the sun-striped clearing, he tightens his fist and mentally locks in, getting ready to wipe out the rest of the frog freaks around him. In the greenlit corridor, he triggers bone control and fires off a barrage of white bone stakes that tear through the smaller frogmen on all sides like a brutal instant delete. In the dark forest, gripping that jagged staff so hard his hands shake, he finally clocks that every swing and every new zombie is draining way more spiritual energy than he expected. On the silent, greenlit field, with that armored frog thing smoking on the ground and barely twitching, he braces himself, ready to drag up more corpses with his necromancy. Even with sweat running down his face as he stares past the skull by his cheek, he knows he's getting worn down, but Loki still has enough in the tank to keep pushing. Seconds later, deep in that eerie cavern, the whole crowd of frog corpses suddenly lights up and stands, a full undead squad rolling out under his control. In the blasted clearing, one of those pale new minions steps up without hesitation and just drills the last struggling monster into the dirt right beside his boot. As the hit lands and the field goes quiet, a glowing blue system window pops up in front of him, calmly flexing that he's just hit level 6. Standing under the trees, smirking to himself with a nervous bead of sweat sliding down, he quietly feels like he's edging closer to where he used to be before regressing. With the sorcerer's shadow looming behind him and green energy swirling, he keeps his focus forward, basically deciding the Sorcerer King can wait his turn because that fight's coming. For now, his eyes are on that vine-wrapped cube resting in the middle of the old stone sigil, knowing that hidden spot in the ruins is his real target. Staff in hand and Cronus plus the dead frogs marching behind him like loyal followers, he heads straight toward the heart of that overgrown temple, ready to claim whatever waits there. He calmly pulls out that scammer's preserved heart he grabbed before everything popped off, cradling it in the cloth like some rare item drop. Cronus floats up beside him, clearly freaking out and firing off questions, while the young man just stays locked in and shuts him down in his head. Leaning over the red glow, he slowly lets the goblin shaman's blood run over the green heart, coating it until it looks straight up cursed. As the last drops spread, the heart starts pulsing hard, throwing off this sick green glow that lights up the ruin around his hands. He stands there in the forest ruins, smirking a little as he grips the throbbing green core, fully braced for whatever this thing is about to trigger. In that eerie green light of the half-broken temple, his smile goes crooked as he decides he's unlocking a secret part of the dungeon gateway. A blue system screen flashes into the void over glowing platforms, saying the hidden route's been uncovered and he's getting transferred out. Next second, he's dropped into a massive ancient coliseum, alone on the cracked floor with a tight squad of goblins huddled nearby. He jogs out to the center of the dusty arena and slows to a stop, eyes scanning every crack and wall like he's loading the whole map into his head. Standing there under the sun, he quietly recalls stumbling on this trial ground once before, only to be locked out and forced to walk away. With his undead squad hovering behind him, he walks straight up to the bright portal sitting right in the middle of the arena. Out of nowhere, a massive clawed paw rips out of the light, like something huge is trying to pull itself through. He actually pauses for a second, Loki thrown by whatever monster just reached out of that portal. Right after that, a floating screen pops up over the arena, saying this trial only lets a single challenger go in. The system tells him to show what he's worth, and he quietly locks in, ready to treat this whole thing like a serious exam. A towering dragon man steps out of the portal, and the system drops the timer, 10 minutes, and that's all he gets. That entire arena was built as a testing ground where constellations scout out and pick hunters they like. High-ranked dragon troops were stationed there on purpose, tossed into those trials as the enemies you have to beat. Watching from the side, Cronus is convinced his contractor won't even last 10 seconds once this thing really starts. The god casually talks about swapping him out for a new saint, and the young man feels his patience snap at that. He figures that even if it's a draconian, it shouldn't be higher than some low one-star mob and treats it like that. The creature slams its foot into the dirt, cracking the ground as it squares up and gets ready to throw hands. The monster lines itself up across from the hunter, staring him and his little fraud man squad down. The young man casually raises a hand, asking for a second to tweak his undead squad, which has the creature straight up puzzled. In his head, he clowns that even storybook villains at least stand back and wait, while the main character powers up. His undead servants actually seem scared of him for once, as if they can feel just how cursed this upgrade really is. A clean blue system alert comes through, confirming that his undead have been successfully upgraded using plague blood. The notification explains they're now classified as plague zombies, and he can respawn them later as long as the right setup is there. Cronus just stares, stunned at what he's doing, while the young man casually flexes that he used to be a 9-star necromancer before all this. He cracks a sure grin, settles into his stance, and signals that he's done warming up and ready for the enemy to come at him. The Draconian squares up to the pack squad of fraud monsters, eyes burning and Loki satisfied he finally gets to wreck them. Not even hesitating, the beast launches forward at crazy speed, closing the gap like it's nothing as it goes in for the hit. The fresh undead squad springs up midair, throwing themselves straight into the path of the towering monster to cut it off. Those plague-ridden creatures swarm in tight, boxing the Draconian in from every angle as they dive into a nasty, well-timed rush. Clawing and wrapping around its frame, they weigh down its body until the beast fires off a raw roar that's all pain and rage. One scrappy minion latches on high and sinks its teeth deep into the monster's shoulder, dumping venom straight into its body. Even with all those undead hanging off it and tearing away, the towering creature refuses to drop, acting like nothing can break it. It cocks back a heavy fist and throws a brutal punch, bursting one zombie apart in midair and covering the place in green spray. A crisp system notice flashes up, saying he's been tagged with the zombie's level 12 poison acid debuff. The young man casually reveals he hijacked the fraud's strength stats and turned all that raw power into venom running through its body. The enraged Draconian loses it and starts ripping through his own minions, smashing them like they're nothing. He slams one massive foot down, and the ancient Colosseum floor spiderwebs with cracks from the raw power behind it. The scaled giant blasts out a roar that rattles the stands and sprints straight at the hunter, throwing everything into that charge. The young man Loki respects how sturdy this thing is and dumps more spiritual energy into his bone staff, pushing it harder. That surge of power hardens into a bright barrier around him, a spirit shield flaring up to face the Draconian's incoming hit. Watching the poison beast still swinging like a raid boss, he clocks that its stats are completely cracked despite the venom. The shield shatters with a sharp flash, and the force of the strike launches him across the arena, his body skidding along the stone. Standing over the dust and rubble, the monster roars in triumph and lifts its arm high, ready to crush the hunter for good. Lying there, the young man snaps on bone control, and the skull tip of his staff lights up with a savage, pulsing glow. The staff rockets off like a bone spear and slams into the Draconian's side, punching straight through its tough scaled flesh. The towering Draconian lets out a guttural scream as the skull staff slams in, that surprise shot punching straight into its scaled chest. While it's reeling and off balance, he instantly orders every remaining corpse under his control to rush the oversized lizard from all sides. The undead sprint in and chomp down on its torn-up scales, rotting teeth sinking into any open spot on the Draconian's battered body. The monster bellows, half furious and half hurting, while the zombies cling on and pump dark frog poison deeper into its veins. Bit by bit, the Draconian's massive frame turns pitch black, its scales staining like spreading ink from the toxic gunk running through it. Even with its whole body rotting out, it manages to swing an arm and crush one of the zombies into the dirt like it's nothing. With another wild swipe, the corrupted draconian rips through a second undead, its razor claws shredding the zombie without hesitation. Watching it slow down, the young man grins quietly to himself, deciding the fight was decent but it's officially over now. Dropping to one knee, the giant lets out one last ragged roar, its voice breaking with raw pain as the strength finally leaves its body. A moment later, the skull-tipped staff slides free from the draconian's darkened chest, pulled out from the ruined scale and flesh. The young man yanks his bone staff back, eyeing the draconian's corpse sprawled across the cracked arena floor. He walks up on the fallen beast at an easy pace, ready to properly close out the fight. Lifting his hand, he lines up his next move, locking in one of his heaviest skills. He triggers his life drain and starts sucking out the last scraps of energy from the giant's ruined body. The draconian goes totally limp, and a crisp system pop-up confirms the trial is officially cleared. Kralnus calmly hypes up the clear, and the young man just brushes it off like he was never really at risk. Right after, he gets the mark of resistance dropped into his rewards for beating the challenge. He gives a low-key proud smile, knowing this new passive mark is actually stacked. Staring down at the dead draconian, he figures the real win here is something else it left behind. Cronus wonders what he's planning, while the young man quietly lines up another spell. He figures that if he wants undead that are actually busted, he's going to need some serious gear to build them. The shot cuts, dropping us in Saitama City under clear blue skies on a calm, sunny day. The hunter strides up to an old, beat-up warehouse and comes to a stop, his expression locked in and focused. He realizes this rundown spot looks exactly like it did before his regression, not a thing out of place. Out of nowhere, a loud blast erupts inside the warehouse, flames bursting out and catching him off guard. He waves away the thick smoke, coughing a little as he notices that even this kind of chaos really hasn't changed. A young man with light-colored hair and skinny calves not steps into view through the haze on the other side. The necromancer feels a grin slide onto his face, instantly sure he's tracked down the one he was searching for. The young alchemist walks out of the lingering smoke, clearly lost on why all this is going down. His name is Kenya Shiniani, known then as the strongest alchemist in all of Japan. The hero walks up to him, blocks his path a bit, and asks if he's got a second to talk. He says his name is Ryoga and straight up asks if he can use the alchemy gear for a bit. The alchemist's face tightens, clearly annoyed that some random guy is suddenly asking for his stuff. The young man calmly points out that just lending it out wouldn't really be a win for either of them. He drops that he already knows about the project focusing on a mid-grade healing potion. Then he casually offers to pitch in, leaving the alchemist Loki baffled by the sudden offer. Inside the lab, there's gear everywhere, with glass tubes, burners, and bright liquids filling the counters. In the center, a big, heavy-looking alchemy cauldron sits on the table, covered in fine engravings and parts. The alchemist just stares stunned, trying to process how the potion ended up that stable. The hero admits that if he'd been solo, he probably wouldn't have figured it out for a couple more years. Grinning to himself, he casually lifts the scalpel, clearly wondering if the other guy's down to try something with it. He doesn't stall at all and drags the blade across his own forearm, letting the metal slice skin like it's no big deal. Right after the cut opens, he tilts the potion vial and lets the thick red liquid run straight over the fresh wound. The gash seals up on the spot, and he holds his arm out, healed clean as new, wearing a smug look like he just flexed on him. The alchemist watches with a stunned smile, clearly buzzed that this potion's actual power is way beyond what he expected. He double-checks if that was all the potion's doing, hyping up how insane the result is. The young scientist reaches for the glowing test tube, eager to get it in his hand and study every detail up close. Before he can snag it, the necromancer yanks it back with a lazy smirk, keeping the tube just out of reach. He wonders aloud if the other is dying to know the recipe behind it, and the scientist instantly shows he absolutely is. With a slightly twisted expression, the young man tells him he'll share, but only if the guy helps him out with one little favor. He lays out a simple deal, saying they team up and he'll put him onto a bunch of new formulas. In exchange, he wants the cash split at 60-40. With the bigger cut rolling his way. The alchemist quietly thinks everything is going exactly how he planned, like the guy just walked right into it. Wearing a slightly wicked grin, the necromancer casually claims him as his new partner. Right after that, the ring on his finger starts glowing, and he readies himself to fire off some necromancy. A massive draconian corpse suddenly dumps onto the lab floor, its huge frame sprawled out across the tiles. The scientist freezes up, staring at it, completely thrown by what this monster of a body even is. The necromancer breaks it down, saying he's about to use the corpse as material since raising the dead is his thing. He tells the alchemist to jump in and help with turning this thing into a zombie. The alchemist backs off and refuses, reminding him there's no signed contract yet holding any of this together. He finally lets him use the lab, and the necromancer nods and like he owns the place, eyes full of sarcasm. The young man's calm as he breaks down how that kind of doubt makes sense, considering everything the other went through. Back then, someone straight up took the glory for his research and pushed him into quitting his position. The so-called god starts whining about being used, and the young man just shrugs it off like every deity plays the same game. He points out that the hesitation is just because the other still hasn't actually watched what he can really pull off. So he puts it out there that he'll jump in and help, letting the other judge his strength up close. Locking in, the young alchemist meets the necromancer's gaze, his whole vibe suddenly more focused. After a beat, he decides to go for it, and passes over one of his trusted alchemy tools. The hero calmly tells him to heat down 5 mana stones and blend them together with the right balance. Not long after, the young man slides over the finished liquid, and the other can't hide how surprised he is at how fast it was done. The necromancer hypes up how cracked the guy's skill is, and the alchemist just low-key waits to see what he's planning next. Holding the finished potion, he slowly dumps it over the draconian corpse laid out on the ground. While he works, he lays out how he carves magic formulas and curses right into the bones to level up the zombie. He points out that to get it right, they've got to stack those layers over and over again. After that, both of them lock in and go non-stop, focusing on every part of the monster's body. The alchemist eventually lets out a tired yell, still stuck grinding ingredients without a single break. Sometime later, the hunter finally says they're done with the insane routine. He stands up and stretches, and the alchemist snaps back that it's actually been 3 full days. The scientist stares at him, genuinely wondering what kind of monster this guy is to have that much power and stamina. Even as a 1-star, he had pushed mana into a dead body and got its heart moving again. He gets that this kid basically breaks common sense, but the stuff he can pull off is totally legit. The main guy turns back to him and calmly throws out the same 60-40 deal again. The alchemist nods and takes the hunter's first offer right away, no more back and forth. He admits that if he worked on this healing potion alone, he'd be grinding at it for at least 2 years. But teaming up with this kid flips everything, so he agrees to link up and work together. The necromancer's smirk sticks as he sees how everything turned out exactly how he wanted. He makes it clear he's expecting serious results from his new alchemist teammate. Now he just needs a soul that can become the main core for this dead dragon he's building. With the plan locked in, the young man pulls out his phone and dials a number. He checks if the crew got the cash already and lines them up with a fresh job. The shot cuts away to a remote stretch of forest out by the border, trees packed tight and the vibe already tense. After a bit, the rookie squad shows up, standing in front of him and basically checking if he's the one who called them out here. The hunter turns and tells them to move out with him, and the 3 rookies fall in line without hesitating. As they hike deeper between the trees, one of them quietly notes how sketchy the place feels, like monsters could pop out from anywhere. The hero casually explains that he brought them here so he could visit someone he used to know and show some respect. Staying sharp, he keeps scanning between the trunks, clearly searching for a certain spot or sign in the forest. The group trails behind him through the tall, shaded woods, feet light and every step careful. Out of nowhere, the protagonist pulls up short, catching a strange feeling in the air that makes him lock in. A moment later, they break into a small clearing and notice a single orc standing there, looking like it's posted on guard duty. The trial instantly flags it, pointing out that this thing's high level and way more dangerous than it looks. But instead, he decides to run a quick test on how strong his new bone weapon really is. He taps into his bone control, and the weapon fires off a sharp arc of energy straight ahead. The golden bone starts leaking this dark gloom, packed with nasty, heavy power. The orc clocks the threat and hurls his spear with everything he's got at the incoming strike. The spear cuts through the air at crazy speed, trying to cancel out the necromancer's attack. Watching it, he cracks a small grin, already knowing that spear isn't blocking his magic. In his head, he's almost laughing, knowing the monster's doomed because that shot isn't going wide. The flying bone blade smashes into the spearhead and blows it apart with ridiculous strength. The attack slams into the orc's shoulder, making the beast howl from the heavy impact. The young man notes he'd actually targeted the heart, but admits the creature is way tougher than it looks. The beast yanks the broken chunk of spear out of its own shoulder, ripping it free like it's pissed off more than hurt. Even bleeding hard, the thing swings around and tries to jab the rest of the spear straight at the young guy. It lowers itself and bolts right at the hunter, going all in for one last crazy rush. The main dude doesn't even flinch, just stays planted, locking in and waiting for the perfect second to move. Out of nowhere, a huge blast of flame slams into the monster, blasting it full force in the chest. Their leader throws up a shield just in time, and the hunter notes how clean that timing really was. With one eye glowing bright, the necromancer dials in again, getting ready to drop more magic on the target. He calmly bumps the number up to 3 instead of 1, and fires off his bone control skill. 3 long bone tendrils whip out and coil around the battered orca's body, locking it down. Sharp bone spikes tear through the creature in multiple spots, pinning it and ending the fight for good. With the orc finally down, the two of them just stand there for a second, looking at its bulky body sprawled out across the forest ground. The party's leader is barely processing it, Loki stunned that he actually managed to take out an orc like that. The young man brings him back to reality, reminding everyone there's no time to stand around because things are only getting started now. The leader glances his way, unsure, and asks if he's really positive this is how they should move forward. He calmly says he is, and right on cue, the orc corpse twitches and drags itself up as his new zombie follower. The young man tells them the person he's trying to track down is living inside that orc village up ahead. Off in the distance, they can see a big village built around rough wooden walls, with several guards watching the gate. The leader hesitates and questions him again, saying he thought their goal here was just to come and pay respects. The necromancer brushes it off with a casual nod and a quiet was, his undead orc soldier standing right at his side. He lays it out straight, saying the person they're hunting for is holed up inside that monster settlement. Wearing a crooked grin, the young man admits they can even farm some extra cash off this whole situation. The three hunters just stare at him, completely stunned by what he's suggesting. Time rolls on, and the sky over the forest slowly turns orange as the sun drops toward the horizon. Deeper in the trees, one of the orcs that had rushed them earlier lies sprawled out on the ground, body totally still. Right then, a faint glow pops up on his status screen as he dings level 13 and all his stats jump up. The notification also pops off a warning, saying he's already hit the absorption cap for that specific race. He isn't really surprised. He pretty much guessed his power couldn't just stay broken like that forever. So he wraps it up and decides the grinding is done for today, calling the hunt there. Later, once he's back at camp, he waves one of the female hunters over so they can talk in private. He calmly checks with her, asking if she's set now that 3 full days have already gone by. Night settles in fast, and a bright full moon spreads pale light over the thick, shadowy forest. In the tent, the squad leader goes over their updated stats and decides they'll launch the attack the next day. Outside the tent, the trio still awake gives a quick nod, and the leader assigns the girl to handle night watch. After they split up for the night, the young man heads out, leaving his squad while his orc zombie army holds the perimeter. 2 of his newer undead soldiers plant themselves like statues at the edge of camp, staying alert for anything. With that protection in place, the 3 rookie hunters crash out and sleep easy, even though the hero himself isn't there. A little distance away, the protagonist sits alone on a big rock, quietly staring up at the stars scattered across the sky. He's finally hit the next level and is ready to check out the new knowledge and skills that just opened up to him. As he confirms it, the system pulls his mind into the old master's spiritual library where the dead have left their wisdom. Inside that quiet space, he walks up to one of the ancient books, ready to pull out the info stored inside. But the system shuts him down and says he's gotta hit level 45 before he can even peek at it. He gets irritated, realizing he's stuck with nothing but the newbie necromancer manuals. He lets out a quiet sigh, deciding that having these starter books is still better than being totally clueless. The young man drops down onto the floor right there, and starts going through one of the guides he can open. Locking in hard, he studies every single page of that dusty old magic text. His eyes almost seem to light up as he downloads every bit of info into his brain. When the first light of morning hits, the system dings and tells him he's just picked up a new skill. Later on, one of the trial hunters drags himself awake, moving slow and wiped out, but his eyes snap open all at once when something right in front of him jumps his attention. One of the protagonist's orc zombies is leaned in close, staring straight at him with those glowing eyes. The young man flinches hard and hops back, snapping out of it as the hero basically tells him to quit zoning out. The squad leader asks why he panicked like that, then actually looks closer and realizes the monster's whole vibe is different today. Grinning, the young man casually explains that he just did a few upgrades on his undead crew. His squad's now stacked with armored zombies that hit way harder and can tank way more damage than before. This new ability throws bone armor over them and even lets him twist and shape their dead flesh how he wants. Backed by these fresh minions, he says it's finally time to move on the orc settlement. The sky starts going orange as the sun drops, and the team gets locked in, gearing up for the big raid. All set, the hunters push forward alongside the marching zombie army, heading straight for the enemy village. They roll up on the orc settlement at last, a massive stronghold ringed with heavy walls and defenses. Up on a tall lookout, one of the guards clocks their approach and instantly blasts the alarm for an incoming attack. A squad of spear-wielding orcs rushes to the inner gate, forming a rough line like they're about to hold the place no matter what. The necromancer calmly raises his hand toward them, getting ready to flex his bone control skill right at the gate. A heartbeat later, a heavy blast of power erupts out, blowing the wooden gate apart into flying chunks. The orc guards closest to it get launched back, bodies tossed through the air by the impact of the spell. Grinning, he casually grips a spear made of bone and signals for the monsters to chill with all the noise. Out of the thick smoke and dust, a massive axe-carrying orc steps forward, towering over the broken entrance. The beast bellows this angry roar, gearing up to go straight for the intruders standing at the gate. Up on the wall, more orcs climb into view, archers lining the edge as they pull back their bowstrings. A savage storm of arrows pours down toward the hunters, launched with zero hesitation or mercy. Their commander drops an energy barrier in front of the squad, shielding everyone as the arrows slam into it. The team's archer locks in two, lifting her crossbow as fiery light wraps around it and starts burning along the bow. She lets one shot fly, and the single flaming bolt splits midair into a bunch of arrows that spread out and tag multiple targets at once. One monster takes it right in the chest, flames bursting across its torso as it lets out a raw scream from the burn. The young man watches with Cronus perched near him, a small grin on his face, clearly pleased that this is only their opening play. Fired up and pissed, a whole wave of orcs charges straight at them, trying to smash the invaders on the spot. In response, he orders his armored zombie squad to move up, and the undead line surges forward into the fight. One of the zombies sprints ahead and smashes its fist straight into an orc's face, sending the monster stumbling back from the hit. Right after, that same zombie unleashes a sharp beam of blue energy from its body, drilling it directly into another monster's chest. Seeing that, the young man smiles to himself, Loki satisfied that the late-night studying actually paid off way better than he thought. Watching all this, the rest of the orcs freeze up, straight up rattled by how insane these new enemies' powers really are. But the young man stays calm and points out that what they've seen so far is just the warm-up before things really kick off. The next second, a massive wave of orcs sprints straight at the necromancer's zombie squad, going all in. One of his undead steps up and blocks an orc's heavy swing with its thick, reinforced shield of bone. The brute follows through and hammers its axe right into the zombie's armor, smashing straight into the plating. A quick alert from the system pops up, saying the armor's taken a hit, and its defense rating just dropped. Seeing that, he channels his dark magic again, locking in to patch up and reinforce his servant's broken gear. In moments, the zombie's armor knits back together, looking solid, and its durability bar climbs back up. Right after that, he casts Flesh Ripple, sending Twisted Meat flying out to slam the charging enemies into the dirt. The warped flesh suddenly shoots through the chest of one confused orc, catching him totally off guard. The rest of the orcs, drawn by pure hunger, start tearing into the flesh splattered on the ground and stuck to their own bodies. The squad leader watches how it all plays out, and is Loki stunned by how smart the young guy set this up. He starts to get that the way the young man handles his skills is on a totally different level from a normal hunter. The sticky zombie meat wraps around the orcs' feet, almost gluing them to the ground so they can't break free. Once the orcs are locked down, the undead squad falls back a few steps, waiting calmly for the next command. The massive orc boss sees his troops getting folded without effort, and rage just boils up inside him. That anger bursts out as a bloody red aura flares around him, and his whole body starts to morph. The system kicks out a sharp alert saying Berserk has triggered, flagging the situation as max danger. The hero watches him power up and can't help feeling hyped that the orc leader is finally going all out. The orc boss loses it in a full feral rampage, his muscles bulking up as that red energy floods his body. The system updates again, stating that Berserk mode is fully active and the threat level has jumped to a special tier crisis. The hunter only grins, almost relieved the monster finally snapped and started taking the fight seriously. Letting out a vicious roar, the beast yanks up its axe and hammers it down with everything it's got. The strike rips through the air like a brutal shockwave, whipping straight toward the young man at full speed. He doesn't even flinch, just raises his hand and calmly triggers his bone control skill. In an instant, massive bone pillars burst out of the ground in front of him, surging up to meet the incoming attack. The charging monster is smashed into and run through by those jagged stakes, its body locked in place. The huge brute crashes down onto its knees, completely pinned and unable to move. It feels the foreign bones crawling deeper inside, spreading through it as it desperately tries to fight it off. Watching that struggle, the young man wears a dark, satisfied grin, knowing its spiritual energy is already being drained. The monster howls in pain as the crawling darkness fully floods its body and erases the last of its strength. He tells the system to chill and stop doom-talking, even as the power usage spikes up to 40%. The young man realizes controlling 6 bones at once is burning through his spiritual power like crazy. He knows if even one bone slips, the monster will start moving again, so he decides he should finish it by going for the heart. With that thought locked in, the hunter commits to using bone control one more time for the killing blow. His spiritual power climbs up to 68, and another bone spear blasts out, drilling straight into the orc. After that clean hit to the chest, the monster finally crashes to the ground and doesn't move anymore. The young man stands there gasping, drained after the fight nearly wipes out the rest of his spiritual energy. He raises his hand toward the fallen orc and triggers Life Drain, pulling power back into his body. A soft white glow wraps around him, and his spiritual power jumps back up to 74. With his energy topped up again, he relaxes, wearing a confident grin as he resets for whatever comes next. The remaining orcs stare at their fallen chief, completely frozen, terror running through all of them. One finally bolts, yelling for the others to retreat, and the whole swarm starts sprinting out of the village. The young man has zero plans to let them dip, and his eye lights up with an eerie green glow. He triggers Flesh Ripple again, sending it crawling across the ground to snare the legs of the fleeing monsters. Their feet lock up mid-run, and they crash hard, tumbling over each other in a full pile-up. In moments, every orc that tried to escape is lying there pinned to the dirt, unable to move. Smirking, he taps into his necromancy, dragging them back up as a fresh squad of armored orc soldiers. The legendary orc chief, who once ruled the place, now just lies there like any other dead body. The 3 hunters stand over the wrecked battlefield, eyeing the corpses and wondering how much cash this haul will pull. The young man, though, grips the chief's massive axe, treating it as the real loot that makes the whole run worth it. His system window pops up, revealing the weapon as a rare-grade blood axe that levels up in power the more it's soaked in blood. Looking over the ruined orc village and all the loot, he can't help smirking to himself, deciding the whole takeover was totally worth it. He casually passes the blood axe to the squad's captain and leaves the rest of the cleanup and looting on them. The veteran hunter nods at the handoff and tells him to dip out and get some rest while they handle the aftermath. Hearing that, he turns his back on the busy group and quietly makes his way deeper into the forest alone. After walking for a while, he stops in front of a massive, ancient-looking tree, realizing this is exactly what he's been searching for. He stares at the towering trunk and calls out to the person hiding within, wanting them to step out so they can handle things directly. The old giant tree just stands there, not reacting at all, leaving his words hanging in the still forest air. Letting out a tired breath, he reaches into his bag, pulls out a white bone, and gets ready to force the situation his way. A dark grin spreads across his face as the bone in his grip lights up, flames flickering to life along its surface. With that eerie glow still in his eye, he angles the bone toward the giant trunk, fully ready to blast the tree. He swings down hard, pouring everything into the hit, and a sick green light flares around the bone as it slams in. Dark energy ripples out from the impact and blows back around him, and for a second he low-key questions why every meetup has to start like this. From inside the shattered trunk, a shadowy shape slowly forms, red eyes burning as it demands to know who's bold enough to wake it. The young man just smiles, genuinely hyped that he finally has this guy in front of him instead of as some distant legend. In his head, he calls him Sora Kashiwagi, the well-known magic brawler from the stories, and the drifting soul clearly didn't see that coming. The ghostly figure narrows those glowing eyes at him, trying to figure him out as it presses him on how he learned that name. The hunter explains that he knows about the time Sora blocked a monster Tide 30 all by himself, about 5 years back. As those old events replay in both their minds, a worn stone monument appears beside them, like a bookmarked memory of that stand. Back then, Sora shredded enemies as someone who could cast like a top mage and throw hands like a frontline beast at the same time. The soul gives a small, relaxed smile, saying it looks like his death actually counted for something in the end. The young man quietly notes that plenty of people died without even getting their names remembered. Hearing that, the ghost's mood shifts, and he asks the young man what he's really trying to say. The young man brings up Naruhito, asking if the soul still remembers the vice master from that old guild. The memory cuts to a village already swallowed by flames, houses and streets disappearing under a massive blaze. In the chaos, a man's voice is blasting over the radio, begging anyone listening to send support. He hurriedly reports that there are still civilians stuck in the farming district, boxed in by monsters on all sides. With his voice starting to crack, the man blurts out his own name over the radio like one last forced shout for help. He yells that the situation is impossible for him to handle alone and begs again for someone to back him up. The only answer from the radio is a cold notice that no reinforcements are available and no support is coming. The man just stands there, totally quiet, staring down with this heavy, bitter look on his face, like the truth finally hit way too hard. It clicks in his head that they were basically thrown in as bait so everyone else could slip out through the north gate. The voice coming through the radio even says it straight, admitting the main squad made it out thanks to their sacrifice. Hearing that, the warrior's temper snaps, because command knew there were civilians here and still sent them in. The person on the radio tries to calm him down, telling him not to talk like everything's already doomed. The one who sold him out claims the real credit for stopping the monster wave belongs to whoever manages to survive this mess. Shaking with anger, the man slams the radio into the ground, realizing that as long as you walk out alive, they'll paint you as the hero. Right then, a nearby monster jumps toward a fallen civilian, ready to tear them apart on the spot. The warrior reacts instantly, channeling his dark magic and yanking the victim out of harm's way before the claws land. With no time to rest, he keeps pushing forward through the burning ruins, cutting down monsters and forcing open an escape route. The man tells the remaining squad to grab the villagers and bounce out of the ruins as fast as possible. The hunters pause, exchanging nervous looks, clearly stressing hard over leaving him behind. He snaps, shouting that it's a direct order and they need to move out now. No arguments. The soul goes on about how the guy who threw him into that fatal mission later got praised as some legendary hero. Because of that, every trace of the soul's real achievements got wiped, scrubbed clean from the history books. The protagonist calmly points out how messed up it is, since the one who actually died had all his glory taken. The specter instantly flares up, raging at the young man to stop stalling and just spit out what he really wants. The young man, low-key amused, offers to help the ancient hero get payback for what was done to him. The ghost fixes its glare on him, red eyes blazing with anger and deep doubt. The young man tells him straight that they should seal a deal so he can bring him back as a crazy strong undead. The ancient warrior's spirit just keeps glaring at him, quiet, carrying nothing but straight rage in his eyes. The necromancer calmly runs it back, laying out the same deal and asking him to roll with him as his underling. As he speaks, the ring on his finger suddenly lights up, dripping this heavy green necromancy glow. He points at the draconian's corpse, explaining that he's already set up a fresh body waiting for the soul to move into. The ghost studies the monster's remains for a long second, looking like he's really weighing everything in his head. The soul admits that, floating around like this, he hadn't even thought about paying his enemies back. After a moment he says he's in, but makes it clear he's putting one rule on the table first. The ancient hero lays it down that he won't go along with anything that hurts regular, innocent people. The young man realizes the condition hasn't changed at all and sees that the hero's core hasn't flipped one bit. In his head, he's low-key impressed, thinking that's exactly how a real hero would act, and he can't help but grin. So the young man nods to himself, takes the deal as it is, and locks in on keeping his word. The wandering soul agrees to the terms after that, and offers itself up to serve him as an undead under his command. Right on cue, the system feed pops up, saying he's now in control of the earthbound spirit, Soka Kashiwaji. He suddenly recalls that in his life before the regression, he had forced this same soul into becoming a dread knight. Looking at things now, the young man starts wondering how crazy it could have been if he'd hooked it up with a strong body from day one. Kronos checks out the draconian body and throws it heavy praise, calling it a straight-up masterpiece. On the floating status panel, his new servant is shown off, tagged as an incomplete eldritch dragon. The young man gets amped seeing the magic fighter trait listed, since the old skeleton knight never had anything like that. The details on the screen point out that this trait lets him use the skills of both a mage and a close combat fighter at the same time. He then turns to the new servant and casually asks how it feels moving around in that dragon body. The dragon flexes its claws and wings, then straight up says this body is nothing compared to what it had when it was alive. The hunter pieces it together right away, getting that the servant's still scuffed and not at full power because of the curse formula he used. Even so, he lets a small grin slip, glad that, honestly, this reboot is already miles better than the first try. With the freshly summoned underling at his side, he pivots away from the smoking village, and the two of them start heading out. Out of nowhere, the creature halts and blocks his path, clearly annoyed and calling him out for labeling it as a minion. Right in front of him, the dragon's huge frame pulls in and shrinks down, and it ends up standing there, arms crossed, clearly pissed. The hero raises a brow and asks what that was about, and the servant makes it clear it hated being tagged as some low-tier minion. The young man offers to just call it by its real name instead, but the creature brushes that off, saying that name's already gone. Watching all that, he thinks this servant is a real headache to deal with now, and its whole attitude is way different from before. The dragon wants some scary, legendary name that'll make enemies freeze up, but he just sits there blank, unable to come up with anything solid. The young man casually throws out options like Fafnir, Black Dragon, and Tiamat, but the beast shoots down every single one without a second thought. Getting irritated, he finally tells the so-called servant to just roll with Orochi, only for the creature to instantly shut that down too. The hunter stares at him, actually considering decking him right there, while the dragon looks back with that annoyed, offended stare like he's above all this. Then the creature suddenly backpedals and says the very first name, Fafnir, is actually fine after all. The young man lets out this tired sigh, agrees to stick with Fafnir, and starts turning away like he's done with the whole dumb argument. The freshly named Fafnir calls out again, grumbling that he's basically half naked and can't just walk around like this. He scans the ruined orc village, eyes drifting over crushed tents and scattered gear as he hunts for anything he can throw on. Spotting a beat-up tent flap, the creature yanks off a broad strip of fabric and wraps it around himself as quick improv clothing. Watching the scene, the young man silently wonders if this goofy, extra behavior is what the legendary hero was really like the whole time. Back in the busted-up lab, the alchemist suddenly yells out, pointing towards something moving weirdly in the dark. He's hyped as he explains that the corpse soaking in the tank is suddenly twitching and starting to wake up. Fafnir casually says he went ahead and picked up a soul, and the scientist loses it, trying to rush in so he can study him point blank. The dragon side-eyes him, thinks this dude is mad strange, and asks if he can just deck him once, but the young man shuts that down. The protagonist's face hardens as he pulls Fafnir's focus back, signaling that it's time to stop messing around. He then tells the squad they're bouncing back to Tokyo to sort their loot and gear, and the crew just nods and rolls with it. When they return to the lab, the young man stands in front of the workbench and starts getting ready to tap into his necromancer skills. Dark energy spills from his hands as he begins reshaping the corpse of the orc chief he took down earlier. He takes a seat, leans back for a moment, and thinks hard about what exactly he's going to turn that monster's body into. Fafnir and the scientist stay locked on him, silently watching to see what kind of undead creation he's about to pull off. With a crooked grin still on his face, he looks over at Kronos and the alchemist and asks if they want to see what he'll do with this corpse. The alchemist loses it a bit inside and quickly shakes his head, insisting he doesn't want to know anything about this new experiment. Even so, his eyes keep drifting back to the scene, and before he knows it, his hands are already grabbing bottles and herbs, putting things together. At that point, the scientist just lets out a breath, admitting that this kid keeps blowing past what he thought was possible every single time. Grinning to himself, the young man activates flesh separation on the orca-like beast they brought down, treating it like just another job to get done. The spell kicks in, and everyone watches as the creature's meat peels away piece by piece, its white bones slowly pushing through underneath. Kronos glances over and asks if he's planning to add another warrior to his squad, and the hunter casually notes that stacking power is never a bad move. A bright panel flashes in front of him, and the system reports that the reforging is almost perfect, with the skeleton's base stats about to be doubled. The alchemist finally steps up, handing over a small vial he brewed, explaining it's made to be poured into this new servant's core. Once absorbed, the liquid locks onto the bones and boosts their defensive talent, and the young man nods, figuring that kind of tankiness will come in handy. Grinning to himself, he figures this new build can just roll as his personal bodyguard. The freshly made skeleton drops down onto the lab floor, bracing itself like it's about to get up for the first time. A 2-star skeleton guard straightens up, twin shields raised, already locked in on defending its owner. He lays down the command in his head, assigning it to cover him every time he pops off his life-drain skill. He gives the new servant some quiet props for how well it turned out, genuinely satisfied with his handiwork. The scientist eyes the skeleton and wonders why he went with bones for this summon instead of anything else. He keeps it simple, saying bones don't really rot, and he can bend and reshape them however he wants. The alchemist nods, clearly impressed he even bothered to think about long-term upkeep for an undead unit. He mentions he's got a dip for some lame errand and asks the alchemist to keep an eye on the servant while he's gone. The alchemist frowns a bit, and questions where he's even planning to head off to this late at night. He casually mentions he's heading up to the Pantheon to grab a holy spell now that he's leveled up. The scientist just stares at him, totally stunned, like his brain blue-screened at that answer. He suddenly freaks out, and demands to know what a holy spell is even supposed to be. His partner, still thrown off, blurts out if the kid's actually been a priest this whole time. In his mind, a goofy mental image pops up of him as a skeleton priest, which only makes the doubt hit harder. Standing there with Kronos beside him, he calmly admits he's actually a pretty serious believer. The alchemist snaps that there's no way that's true, and the young man fires back that the comment Loki hurt. Wanting to move past it, he switches gears and asks if the healing potion patent is already locked in. The scientist says it's all filed, and the young man gives him props for moving fast, while the guy shrugs, saying he just hates putting things off. His partner then points out the real issue is hype and marketing, since the big expo isn't even happening until next year. Hearing that, the hunter casually says he can hype the potions for them whenever he gets the chance. The alchemist's down with it, and instantly slips him a vial of the new brew to carry around. The young man smirks, already thinking that if this play actually works, they're going to rake in stupid money. In his head he's already counting stacks, reminded that in the end, cash is what really keeps everything moving. His partner side-eyes him for a moment, quietly questioning if this dude is seriously supposed to be a priest. The view then shifts over to the Pantheon, a massive tower that dropped into the world after the Great Cataclysm. Inside, crowds pack the halls, lining up to snag spells and blessings handed down by the constellations. As he walks through, he's thinking about how these so-called gods are the ones begging their followers for offerings. Yet he feels zero holy vibe in there, and can't ignore how random high-value items are just lying around. After climbing for what feels like forever, the young man's breathing starts to get heavy as he keeps heading up. He grumbles that this divine place doesn't even have an escalator or an elevator anywhere. The hunter side-eyes the endless stairs, and Loki wonders if the gods want him to prove his faith by hiking all 108 steps on foot. With Kronos walking next to him, he keeps muttering that this climb is brutal and his legs are cooked. The god asks how much more they've got, and he tells him it's about the same grind they already dragged themselves through. At that moment, the young man clocks that they're literally only halfway up this tower of stairs. He's irritated now, thinking there better be some insane reward waiting at the top for slogging through this. With no other option, the young man just locks in and keeps dragging himself up the endless stone staircase of the Pantheon. After what feels like forever, he steps into a massive hall where the ceiling looks like it's straight up displaying the night sky. Keeping his face serious, the protagonist studies the holy chamber closely, taking in every detail like he doesn't want to miss a thing. The constellations start reacting one by one, and little Kronos breaks into laughter at how wild the scene looks. The deity drops the chill act, goes full true form, and basically decides it's his turn to make a move. He lifts his gaze to the crowded night sky, locking in as he gets ready to really flex what he can do. With one simple tap, he locks the giant of the rebellious heavens into the actual god roster, make it official. Right after that, the young man picks up the spell's curse blessing and this sharp wedge-style punishment effect. The new skills bump his numbers and hit power hard, and the young man quietly admits this upgrade feels legit. The old titan lets out this big, proud laugh, hyping himself up like he's on some unbeatable divine level. Then the system cuts in and flatly states that this god's divinity is still weak and needs real achievements to climb. The star glowing over them is barely pushing out light, and the young man calls the system trash, which Loki bums the god out. Even so, he ends up smiling, focusing on the fact that his strength went up again, which is all he really cares about. A little later, the young man wanders through the city, staying quiet, eyes sharp, clearly lost deep in his own thoughts. He strolls off without rushing, taking in the lights and noise of the city at night. Out of nowhere, someone calls out from behind, demanding to know why he's bailing on the Pantheon. A tall, buff blonde named Shigeru Sadik steps out of the crowd and casually walks up to him. The hero studies his face, clearly puzzled, trying to figure out who this guy even is. The tank-like dude explains he used to watch over him back at the orphanage, and asks if it's ringing any bells. The young man suddenly remembers and realizes this clown is the trash who used to bully and rob the kids there. A flashback pops up of the older boy slamming him against the wall by the collar in a dim, rundown room. In that memory, the punk is in his face, blaming him for ratting him out to the director and spitting threats. Remembering how it went down, the young man launches a brutal straight punch right into the guy's face, not even hesitating. The hunter calmly asks if that nose ever healed up, and the other guide snaps, getting heated over the disrespect. The bully forces himself to chill, muttering that he almost lost it back there. Smirking now, he shifts his stance and flashes a small metal pin clip to his chest. It's the badge of the Erigeri Guild, the big-name powerhouse everyone in this area knows about. He looks down on him, calling him some bottom-tier hunter, and saying things won't go like they did in the past. The young man just holds his gaze, thinking that for him, it's basically the same as always. Hearing that makes the bigger guy flare up again, his jaw tight and teeth grinding as he glares at him. He explodes, yelling at him to quit acting high and mighty, body tensing as he gets ready to swing. The bully lunges in, reaching out to clamp a hand on him, clearly trying to scare him by force. Right then, someone else suddenly steps between them and catches his wrist mid-grab, killing the sneak move. The bully freezes, wide-eyed, and quickly starts trying to justify himself to his captain. The bulky fighter casually tells him they should head somewhere else and settle this with a real match. In his head, he's trying to figure out what's going on and why this kid is suddenly beefing with the guild itself. Their captain steps in, checks if they've got some past history, then basically signs off on figuring it out with their hands. The loudmouth grins, mentioning the kid only just got his hunter license and acting like this whole thing's just a joke. Everyone watches as the young man gives an instant nod, taking the do away quicker than anyone thought he would. The bully stares for a second, thrown off because he never thought the kid would agree without even thinking. Wearing a crooked smile, the young man calmly asks if he's the one who's suddenly nervous about stepping into a real fight. The thick-necked hunter bites down hard, shouting that there's no way he's walking back from what he just ran his mouth about. The view then cuts to the Erigeri Guild's training gym, set inside a clean, sleek high-rise that looks straight out of the city center. Under the bright lights in the middle of the ring, the two hunters square up, locked in as the showdown is about to kick off. The young man calmly explains that he's actually a priest and that his summoned servant will be doing the fighting for him. The enemy eyes the creature, snorts like it's a joke, then flexes his stat-boosting necklace and ring as if that alone makes him untouchable. Looking down on him, the young man thinks to himself that junk gear like that isn't going to tilt the fight his way at all. Right then, the arena's system kicks on and a bright holy sigil lights up across the floor beneath them. The blonde fighter grins, loose and ready, locking in as he gets set for the clash that's seconds away. The system's voice echoes around the stadium, stating a life-saving barrier is in place for both sides as the duel officially starts. With everything in position, the arena shifts into battle mode and the system spins up for the fight to truly get underway. The interface boots up with a little glow, happily scanning and logging the HP and defense stats of every hunter in range. A notification pops up across the arena screens, confirming a safety barrier will auto-trigger if anyone's about to actually die. The bully leans in with a smug look, basically clowning him by asking if he's suddenly gone soft and afraid to throw down. The young hero just stares him down with pure contempt, honestly confused about what this dude is even ranting about. At the same time, the monster is thinking he never thought he'd randomly bump into someone from the Erigeri Guild here of all places. He then braces himself for a fight, kind of hyped to see how much punishment his body can actually take now. The creature decides that since he's up against an Erigeri member, there's zero reason for him to hold back anymore. But the young man calmly tells him not to finish things in a single hit, since he needs to try something out first. The dragon-like servant just mutters that going easy is actually harder for him with how strong he's gotten. The bully, fired up and pissed, screams that the hero's done for and that he's about to remind him of his place. He then dashes in at full speed, putting all his power into a heavy spear thrust aimed straight at the hero. But the creature casually shuts down the attack, lifting his leg and blocking the spear strike with nothing but his foot. The attacker freezes, stunned that this monster snuffed out his special move like it was nothing. Staying cool, the blonde guy hops back a step and starts lining up another skill in his head. Smirking all nasty, he shifts into his second stance, ready to fire off a drilling, straight-through strike. As he watches, the young man quietly notes that his servant is reacting way sharper than before. The creature wonders if this dude seriously believes something that slow could ever land on him. In a blur, the draconic one snaps his arm out and moves to shut the attack down again. He clamps his fingers around the spear mid-thrust, and the blonde guy just stands there stunned at what he's seeing. The attacker suddenly notices his body locked in place, his whole mind freezing up with raw fear. Staring him down, the monster basically writes him off as pathetic for charging in with zero plan after the first move. He calmly points out that if this weren't a regulated match, the guy would have already been dropped for good. Then the creature remembers his master's words and realizes he was supposed to be holding back this whole time. But it's already over for him, and with his palm pressed flat on the guy's chest, he winds up to blast him with everything he's got. The servant follows through and slams a brutal punch straight into the man's face. The heavy hitter yells out as he's launched backward, tumbling through the air from the insane impact. The monster casually remembers how the guy bawled the last time his nose got smashed in a fight. But the young man notices that this time he only hollered for a moment, and figures he's leveled up a bit. The aggressor staggers back to his feet, burning with rage, and spits out that he's nothing but trash. Boiling over, the bully lunges in again, driving his spear forward to stab at the servant. But the creature casually meets it with his foot once more, stuffing the whole attack like it's nothing. The clash is so intense that the arena floor splits open, spiderweb cracks racing out under their feet. Even after that, the aggressor stays locked in and resets his stance, lining up yet another thrust with his spear. The creature warns that throwing out the same attack twice in a row just makes you predictable and easy to read. He suddenly whips his body around, spinning once as his massive tail smashes straight into the bully's front leg. The guy's shin snaps with a nasty crack, and a wave of brutal pain shoots up his whole body. The attacker just stares down, eyes blown wide, totally stunned by what just happened to his leg. The servant calmly says the match is finished and lines up what he plans to be the last strike. He slowly lifts his arm over the defeated hunter, ready to end things here and shut the fight down for good. Lying there, the blonde hunter starts tearing up as it finally hits him that he's completely done. Right then, the captain steps in out of nowhere and orders the servant to cut the attack before it goes too far. The main guy can't help getting irritated, since his whole setup just got ruined mid-fight. In his head, he notes that they showed up way sooner than he thought they would. The arena system calmly calls the match over, with the trash talker lying flat on the ring floor, completely done. Their captain crouches down to support him, saying he'll get a priest on standby to patch him up ASAP. Right then, the blonde kid steps forward like he's been waiting, pointing out he's already got a priest standing right in front of them. The captain pushes back, thinking out loud that some basic one-star heal won't be enough to fix busted bones. Curious and a little skeptical, he asks what kind of plan the kid has to actually get his beat-up partner back on his feet. Staying calm, the young man pulls a small vial from his things, saying he'll use a mid-tier potion to handle the injuries. The beaten hunter glances up and wonders if this kid seriously hasn't seen all the updates about those potions getting mass-produced. Fired up and embarrassed, the bully barks that he doesn't need anyone's pity and tells the kid to back off. The young man holds his ground, thinking this is exactly the kind of moment he's been hunting for to show off how strong these potions really are. Letting a slightly twisted grin slip, he decides this beaten loudmouth is the perfect guinea pig sitting right in front of him. The young man casually tilts the red potion over and lets it run down onto the busted leg of the guy laid out on the ground. The captain just stares stunned, because the blonde dude's leg isn't just healed up, even the wrecked bones look clean and solid again. Watching that, he can't help but hungrily focus on the vial, thinking how badly he wants a potion like that in his own gear. The hero pulls a small smirk, realizing this is exactly the reaction he was gunning for to push his potions. The other man leans in, already hooked, and asks where he managed to snag potions like that when they're supposedly everywhere now. The protagonist, still calm, thinks to himself with a quiet smile that this arrogant opponent walked straight into his setup. The young man looks the captain over and asks if, holding that position, he's rocking at least a 3-star hunter rank. With a confident grin, he sets a challenge, telling him they can throw down and he'll spill where the potion came from if the captain comes out on top. Hearing that, the captain agrees to the match, but only on the condition that the potion's source gets revealed no matter who wins. The young man notes that the last match ended way too fast and decides that this time he's going all in from the start. The two step back into place, squaring up across from each other, as a fresh fight kicks off in the wrecked arena. The system calls the start, and the captain wastes no time, launching himself straight at the servant. He shifts into his 5th sword form and clips the monster with a clean, sharp strike. As his blade lands, he finds it kind of wild that the creature could even react to something that fast. Still, he's sure there's only so much speed a huge body like that can keep up with. The system reports that the hit shaved down its defense, and the creature actually feels the sting from that strike. Riding that momentum, the captain keeps swinging, one speedy slash after another into the towering servant. Watching from the side, the protagonist sees it play out exactly how he mapped it out in his head. He knows a speed-heavy style like this is a brutal matchup for the draconic one. That's exactly why he used the potion as bait to poke at the guild leader and drag him in. The creature calmly chooses to treat this match like training, dialing in how his new, heavier body moves. The young man looks proud, seeing how locked in his servant is, and straight up sees him as his go-to guy in this fight. With that thought, he realizes there's no way he can just chill on the sidelines and spectate. So he lifts his hand and drops an unholy blessing on his servant, powering him up for the clash ahead.